Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. Make sure to like this video, go follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, and check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter and also sign up for our expert picks. The links for all of those things are in the description below, so do not miss out on any of this extra college football content. Well, guys, Tuesday marks the initial set of the college football playoff rankings. The first set of those rankings will be released on Tuesday night, and of course, we will have all the coverage you need on those set of rankings. But we did promise you that, in addition to that, we would give you our official rankings, the Gridiron Expert's official top 25 rankings. So get ready, because every Monday, the day before the rankings are released, we will be giving you our top 25. It's no secret that for the past few years, we have had tons of discrepancies, tons of disagreements with the College Football Playoff Committee and their rankings, not just in the top 4, but also all the way down to number 25. We're here to offer our official prediction and ranking them the way we believe they should be ranked when they come out every Tuesday night leading up into Selection Sunday. So without further ado, let's break it down. The Week 11 Top 25 Gridiron Expert Edition, and we'll start with the top 10. Obviously, all of these guys, college football playoff contenders, entering the final month of the season, already a week into the final month of the season. And I really don't think the top 5 can be disputed. I think the top 5 needs to be the way it is. LSU up at number 1. To me, they are the undisputed number 1 team in the country. They've beaten Texas. They've beaten Florida. They've beaten Auburn. Florida and Auburn, both teams that we have in our rankings right now, both teams that we have in our top 15. But when they beat Texas, of course, Texas was a top 10 team at the time. LSU's 8-0. No one seems to be able to stop that passing attack. A huge game this weekend coming against Alabama. I think the playoff committee will probably rank the Crimson Tide at number 2 just to have that game of the century feel. The AP poll did it. The playoff committee did it. But right now, I feel that Ohio State is actually the number 2 team in the country. I believe the Buckeyes deserve that number 2 spot. They have 2 top 25 wins. They beat Indiana at Indiana. Keep in mind the Hoosiers are 7-2 right now, guys. They were not a bad team, and Ohio State annihilated them. And they also beat Cincinnati, who we have ranked as high as number 16 in our rankings right here. We'll get to them in a little bit. But they beat Cincinnati, a solid team out of the group of 5. Ohio State, quality wins. Closest win they've had comes by 24 points. That was against Florida Atlantic in Week 1. And then, of course, Michigan State later on, beating the Spartans 34-10. Buckeyes are playing like the best team in the country right now. Most sound team, most complete team, I think, in the country, offensively and defensively. So I have the Buckeyes at 2, Alabama at 3. Obviously, some questions right now at the quarterback position. Tua's going to be back. Whether Nick Saban wants to say it or not, he's going to be back. There's no way Tua Tagovailoa misses this game against LSU. But their only ranked win this season, coming against a ranked opponent at the time, was Texas A&M. And the Aggies aren't even ranked right now, and anywhere you look. AP poll, coaches poll, certainly not going to be ranked in our top 25. So Alabama, I have at number 3 right now. Undefeated, one of the best teams in the country, no doubt. But to me, the resume is just not there right now. They have a chance to add to that with obviously a quality win over LSU, and then a quality win over Auburn in the Iron Bowl to close off the season, and then potentially a win over Georgia in the SEC championship game. So Alabama at 3, and then Clemson at 4. Some people have the Tigers ranked as high as number 1. Still their number 1 team in the country. I would not go that far yet. I'm certainly not that impressed with Clemson's strength of schedule, and once again, for many of these teams, you can't help their strength of schedule. They can't help it. They can't help the team that they're required to play from their conference. Obviously, Clemson took care of business in the non-conference across the board, beat Texas A&M, a common opponent that Alabama had. But right now, I've got Clemson sitting at 4. I think they still have a couple things to work on. They're starting to hit their stride a little bit. Dominant wins across the board, beat Wofford, not a big deal, but annihilated Boston College a few weeks ago. And I think Clemson's finally starting to piece it together, finishing strong. And if they run the table and finish undefeated, there's no doubt in my mind they're going to make the top 4 by season's end. So Clemson at number 4, and then Penn State at number 5. Once again, I don't think you can dispute that. I don't think Penn State's quite to the point to get in that top 4 yet. I don't think they're quite to the point where they could jump a Clemson or an Alabama or Ohio State or LSU. But I do have them at number 5 because they have quality wins against Pittsburgh, Iowa, Michigan, and Michigan State. And their defense is by far one of the best in the entire country. The Nittany Lions are 8-0, and they have a fantastic opportunity to add to that resume with a road win against Minnesota on Saturday morning. Of course, we have the Golden Gophers ranked right now at number 15 in the country, and we'll address them here in a minute as well. But Penn State at number 5. I don't think you can dispute the top 5. You might be able to switch up the order a little bit, but those top 5 teams cannot change. I don't think they should be changed. Now, you could start switching things up from 6 on, 6 down. Right now, we have Georgia, number 6 in the country. Some people want to put Oregon ahead of the Bulldogs, and I say not so fast. Let's pump the brakes for a little bit. Georgia has a bad loss, absolutely, to South Carolina. Not a good loss, not a good look for a team trying to make the college football playoff and win the SEC. But they do have quality wins over Florida, who we have at number 11, and Notre Dame, who we have as high as number 14 right now. So 2 quality wins for the Bulldogs. Still have an opportunity to beat Auburn in a couple weeks. Still have an opportunity to maybe beat Alabama or LSU in the SEC championship game. I like Georgia at number 6. Even though they struggled against South Carolina, even though they struggled against Kentucky, they responded in a big way against a good Florida team. They're number 6 right now, above a team like Oregon, who has a quality loss to an Auburn team, but since then really hasn't beaten anybody spectacular. They beat they beat USC, they beat Washington, but really don't have a quality win to their name. That could not come until the Pac-12 championship game against potentially Utah, who we have right below Oregon at number 8. I just don't think you can dispute that. I think Oregon right now is a little bit better than Utah, fully sound, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Utah might own a defensive edge, but I like Oregon at 7, Utah at 8, but Baylor at number 9. That's where our kind of first tricky ranking comes in. I think a lot of people might have questions about that. But when you look at it, I was waffling there between 9, 10, 11, between Oklahoma, Baylor, and Florida. And, of course, you can see how we rank them. Baylor at 9, Oklahoma at 10, Florida at 11. I can't justify not having Baylor, the alone undefeated team in the Big 12. I can't justify having them below Oklahoma, who lost to Kansas State. I get Baylor maybe hasn't beaten Texas yet because they haven't played them. But Baylor, the lone undefeated team in the Big 12, does have quality wins on the road at Kansas State, who beat Oklahoma, and at Oklahoma State, who we have in our top 25. They get back-to-back games against Oklahoma and Texas here in a few weeks. Assuming they can get past TCU, they will remain the lone undefeated team in the Big 12 and should be taken seriously as Big 12 title contenders and college football playoff contenders. It's about time Baylor cracks the top 10. I've got them at 9, above Oklahoma, who has one loss right now, of course, coming to Kansas State. Still an elite team, coming off a bye week. How will they fare the remainder of the season? Can they get past Baylor on the road? A potential 9 versus 10 showdown, 8 versus 10 showdown, coming our way potentially in a few weeks. Certainly we'll decide who can maybe make the Big 12 championship game and whether those two teams still can keep their college football playoff hopes intact. We've got Florida at 11. I dropped them out of the top 10. I know a lot of people might still keep them in there. Quality losses to LSU and Georgia, the number 1 team in our rankings and the number 6 team in our rankings. You can't go wrong with that, guys. Florida, very tough schedule, held their own against both teams, which weren't able to get the job done. But I put Florida out of the top 10 because that game against Georgia looked a lot closer than it really was. 24-17, but Georgia dominated that game across the board. Florida could not get off the field on third downs. They're number 11. Now it starts to get a little hairy as well. I think a lot of people might have questions as to why Michigan is above Auburn, why Notre Dame is above Minnesota, why Minnesota is so low at number 15. And then we'll certainly address the group of 5 teams that we have listed in our rankings as well. We'll start with Michigan and Auburn. look, not to dog on Auburn. They have quality losses as well. Their lone losses to LSU and Florida. Both teams 1-11. Both teams seriously SEC and at one time for Florida, college football playoff contenders. They have a quality win over Oregon. Fantastic. Team that we have at number 7. Beat them at the beginning of the season. Close win over Ole Miss this past week. Didn't really impress me much. The performance against Florida didn't really impress me much. I just like Michigan a little bit more than Auburn right now because what Michigan has done since that second half against Penn State, a game where they were just a drop away from tying or potentially beating Penn State in Happy Valley, since that second half, they narrowly lost that game, annihilated Notre Dame, and then went on the road and annihilated Maryland. And I get that Maryland's not some powerhouse, but to go on the road against a Big Ten opponent and take care of business and have a very sound game across the board, Michigan has impressed me. Jim Harbaugh and his team seem to be hitting their stride. It just might be a little too late. Because while they still have yet to play Ohio State, I don't think they're going to be able to make the Big Ten championship or college football playoff. But they certainly seem to be one of the more sound teams across the board and seem to be hitting their stride across the board, more so than I would say Auburn right now, who has put up some good numbers against Ole Miss, put up some good numbers against LSU, a quality opponent in Death Valley. But I was not impressed with Auburn's performance against Ole Miss. That's why I have them at 13. I've been impressed for Michigan for the past few weeks. I've got them at 12. I like Notre Dame above Minnesota, an unbeaten team out of the Big Ten, because Minnesota hasn't played anybody. I'm sorry, Golden Gopher fans. That's just the way it is. You are 8-0 and you are looking good. I'm not going to dispute that. If I didn't think you were that good, I wouldn't have you at number 15 in the country. But Minnesota had very narrow wins against inferior opponents in those first 3 weeks of the season. Since then, they have played the weaker opponent of the Big Ten. I'd say their best win to date right now might be a road win against a beat-up Purdue team, a game they only won by a touchdown, and then maybe a win over Illinois. A team that's, yes, improving, but they're nowhere near the caliber of a Penn State or an Iowa or Wisconsin, all teams that Minnesota has yet to play. If the Golden Gophers and PJ Fleck take care of business this Saturday and beat Penn State at home, I can guarantee you that they will skyrocket in our rankings when they come out next Monday. But right now, Minnesota still needs to show me something. They're annihilating these weaker Big Ten teams, Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers. But can they compete against the best of the best? Can they compete against 3 teams that we have ranked in our top 25 here, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Penn State? That remains to be seen. A tough slate for the remainder of November, but if Minnesota lives up to the challenge and wins those games, or at least plays very competitively, you will see a rise in the rankings. Notre Dame's above them because they have quality losses to Georgia and Michigan, and while they narrowly beat Virginia Tech, a win is a win is a win, and I do think that Notre Dame was a little hungover after that Michigan loss. Their college football playoff hopes are done, but the New Year's Six bowl hopes are not done. I like Notre Dame just above Minnesota because of strength of schedule, because of the quality of losses, because of a couple quality wins that the Fighting Irish do in fact have, and of course the fact that Minnesota and their strength of schedule really is not there. People will criticize that, but go look at UCF the past few years. If you look at UCF in the AP poll the past couple years, where people were talking about them as playoff contenders, the AP poll, they were number 8 in the country, number 7 in the country. But when the playoff rankings came out, they were like number 15 or 16. Something to be said for that. They were number 15 or 16 when the playoff rankings came out because they hadn't beaten anybody, they hadn't played anybody. The AP poll can kind of be skewed when it comes to that. So that's kind of the way we're taking it right now. Minnesota at 15. Let's talk about Group of 5 for a second. Let's talk about Group of 5. Right now, our highest ranked Group of 5 team is, in fact, Cincinnati. They're coming in at 16. But right below them, we have Memphis, who just got a quality win over number 22 SMU. We still have Boise State in there at number 23. Navy just cracked the top 25 at 24. We got a lot of got a Group of 5 teams in here, guys, and a lot of them are from the American Athletic Conference. You'll notice that we don't have San Diego State in these top 25. They don't deserve to be in there. They don't deserve to be in the AP poll. They don't deserve to be in the coaches poll. They don't deserve to be in the playoff rankings. Because like we mentioned with Minnesota, San Diego State has not played anybody. They're a one-loss team. Their lone loss coming to a solid Utah State team. No disrespect to the Aggies. But the Aztecs haven't played anybody. They got a good win against an improving UCLA team, but that's it. San Diego State doesn't deserve to be there. They're not in the New Year's Six Bowl contention, but these guys are. Cincinnati above Memphis, above some of these other teams like Wisconsin, because they're undefeated except for that one loss to Ohio State. They didn't lose to a conference opponent yet. They beat UCF, and the lone loss came to Ohio State, and while it was a blowout loss, a shutout loss, it's still Ohio State, guys. They're the number 2 team in the country. No one's beaten Ohio State so far this season. No one's come close to beating Ohio State. Cincinnati wasn't going to do it, not in Columbus. So I've got Cincinnati still barely above Memphis, who I have taking off big time after that huge win at home against SMU. Quality win for the Tigers and Mike Norvell. They're 8-1. Lone loss coming to Temple. But what I saw at the Liberty Bowl last Saturday night impressed the heck out of me. Cincinnati and Memphis are on a crash course to be meeting as top 15 teams in the finale of the season. They meet in the last game of the season, and depending on how the rest of the conference fares, could meet again in the conference championship game. The problem is, when they meet in the season finale, that could be an elimination game for who contends for the New Year's Six Bowl game, because each of these teams has 2 losses, and I don't see either of them getting into a New Year's Six Bowl game with 2 losses. So many thought it might be the conference championship that decides between Memphis and Cincinnati. It's probably going to be the season finale. So keep an eye for that, depending on how they fare the rest of the season. SMU, because of those 2 teams meeting in the final week of the season, is still in the hunt for a New Year's Six Bowl game. Their hopes are not dashed. Same for Boise State, sitting at 7-1. So in the past few years, it's kind of been a lock that UCF was going to make the New Year's Six Bowl game. That was already kind of predetermined. We had a good feeling about that, unless they had slipped up to Memphis in the AAC title game, which they never did. We finally have some chaos among the group of 5 fighting for that New Year's Six Bowl spot. It's finally fun. There was talk that UCF maybe could have made the top 4. That was fun. We knew it wasn't going to happen. Now we've got a very tight race, all pretty much within one conference, fighting for one spot in a very coveted bowl game. So keep an eye on all these teams from the group of 5 fighting for that New Year's Six Bowl spot. I've got Wake Forest coming in at number 20. I mentioned on Twitter last Saturday that I thought Wake Forest was like one of the best teams in the country, not compared to the top 4, but on Saturday had one of the best performances across the country on Saturday, annihilating North Carolina State. I like them at 20th, above a team like Kansas State, who we have at 21st right now. Very solid team, beat Oklahoma, annihilated Kansas in a game that many thought was a trap game, like the Wildcats at 21st. I mentioned Wisconsin right now. We have at 18 and 19. Why is Wisconsin 18th behind Cincinnati and Memphis? Because what have they done the past 2 weeks? The past 2 games? They fell to Illinois, and they got annihilated by Ohio State. That doesn't deserve you to be in the top 15. Doesn't deserve you to be, I think in the top 16, 17. I have them at 18th right now. Can they bounce back this week with a close and big game for the Big Ten West against number 19 Iowa? See what I did there? Did number 18 versus number 19. But Wisconsin's performance the past 2 games for them has been very unimpressive, has been very poor, and that's why I like Cincinnati and Memphis to be above them. Memphis getting quality wins over SMU and Navy. Cincinnati could be the same for them, and I just don't like Wisconsin being above them right now. And then finally, we kind of addressed those group of 5 teams. I like Oklahoma State at 25 right now. It was kind of a toss-up for me. Do I put in the Cowboys? Do I put in another group of 5 team like UCF, who's slowly improving again? Or do I throw in Indiana, who, as we mentioned, is 7-2 and playing some really good football? But when I looked at the resumes, when I looked at recent success, Oklahoma State made the most sense to crack the top 25. They're 6-3, and if you look at their body of work, they beat Oregon State in the season opener, a team that's now 4-4 and is majorly improving under Jonathan Smith. And they have wins over Kansas State. We have them at 21st. TCU, who they just beat last week and beat Texas by 10 a few weeks ago. And when they beat them, a ranked Iowa State team, who I also have just briefly on the outside looking in. So Oklahoma State putting together a very impressive resume, and it should be mentioned that they beat TCU without their star wide receiver in Tylan Wallace. I think they're hitting their peak at the right time. I think they're hitting their stride at the right time, and there's a very good chance that the Cowboys could be 8-3 when they face off against Oklahoma in their season finale. So I like Oklahoma State at 25th, and they'll stay there until they prove me otherwise, whether it's a very pitiful performance against West Virginia or Kansas or a loss to one of those 2 squads. But I like Mike Gundy and the Cowboys to be 8-3 going into that Oklahoma game and potentially finish 9-3 or 8-4. So here you have it, guys. It's Monday. Tomorrow the college football playoff rankings come out, but this is the one that I feel is right. If the playoff committee wants to get it right, they should rank them just like this. Just kidding, mostly. But this is the first edition of the Gridiron Expert Top 25 rankings, something that we'll be doing every single Monday until Selection Sunday. We want to hear from you. Do you agree with these rankings? Do you disagree with these rankings? We're always the one talking about it. Now it's time for you to voice your opinions on our official rankings. So take a look at these and stay tuned on Tuesday for more analysis on the actual college football Top 25 rankings, playoff rankings. Of course, the first set, and there are going to be many changes to come over the final weeks of the season. So guys, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure to go follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Expert. Check out the official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for the weekly newsletter. Sign up for the expert picks. And as always, thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on the Gridiron Expert.